First of all, let's explain the tier list. We have operators that are broken every single round, pretty self-explanatory. We have operators that are good every single round. These operators are perfectly balanced, and I don't think they need a nerf, as opposed to the people who are broken every round that probably could use a nerf. Situational operators are operators that can be really, really good and even broken, but only in certain situations. So don't think that anybody in the situational tier is below people who are above them, or above people who are below them. Consider this tier as its own little tier list off to the side. Operators that are okay are just operators that are kind of okay. They probably could use 1 or 2 buffs to be better. And then operators that need to be reworked are operators that need to be reworked. It doesn't necessarily mean that they're bad, but I think they need to be reworked for the overall health of the game and their operator. With this out of the way, let's go over my first operator, which is Smoke. I think Smoke is good every round. It's one of the most reliable operators in the game. It's kind of like the Sledge for defense. You can never go wrong with Smoke. Pretty easy to play. The skill ceiling's pretty high, and if you're pretty good with the SMG-11, you can do some damage. Mute, I think, is broken every single round. I think Mute is one of the best defenders in the game right now. With the Zombie getting nerfed, Fenrir getting nerfed next season, and Solus getting nerfed the season after that, or the other way around, I don't know, but they're both getting nerfed. I think Mute is going to be played a lot more. Deimos is also getting played a lot more, and Mute counters Deimos. Dokkaebi and Jackal are also played a lot, and especially people banning Deimos a lot, they're going to be played more. So having Mute on the board is always just going to be broken. He also gets walls, he denies drones, amongst many other things, so I just think that Mute is absolutely insane. Next is Castle, who I think is a little less insane. I think Castle is situational. There are only certain situations where you can play Castle, because sometimes you can't play Castle and it be viable on some sites. I know a lot of people believe that you can play Castle every single site, but that's just not the case, because there's some sites where a zombie is 10 times better. Next is Pulse. For the exact same reason as Castle, I'm going to put Pulse in situational. You're only going to play Pulse if you are roaming below a site, or if you're playing on site trying to scan from below. There are no other scenarios where you can play Pulse, and even sometimes when you're roaming as Pulse below a site, it's not valuable or valid, because again, they have the Dokkaebi, they have the Jackal, they have the Lion, and they have the Deimos. Next is Bandit. Bandit, I also believe, is situational. You're only going to play a Bandit if there's a wall that you need to keep closed, which you'd be surprised is not every single site. Let's take Hookah on Coastline, for example. You're never going to need a Bandit for there. For that exact same reason, I'm also going to put Cade in situational as well. You're not going to bring a Cade every single site, again, like Hookah on Coastline, so gotta put him in situational for the fairness of the tier list. Next is Jaeger. Jaeger is good every single round that you play him. I don't think he needs to be buffed. I really don't think he needs to be nerfed, because arguably you could make a case for him being broken every single round, but he doesn't really like shift the tides in the defender's favor as much as somebody like a Turborao or a Mute or a Nizami. Jaeger is just pretty good, and you can play him every single round and get a lot of value out of him, so I think Jaeger is just good. Oh, and by the way, before anyone gets confused in the comments, I'm not ordering any of these operators in order in the tier list, so I'm not saying that Castle is better than Pulse or that Bandit is better than Cade. These operators in the tier list are not in order. Now, obviously, the tier list is in order, but the operators in their list are not in order. Just wanted to specify that. Next is Doc. Doc is good every single round. He has an ACOG, and in the increasingly ACOG meta, he's just going to be good. Now, utility-wise, obviously, he's not that good of an operator, but we're talking about a meta where utility doesn't matter as much, where, you know, it's not as much of a TDM meta, but it still has that fast-paced aspect to where utility doesn't matter as much. So Doc is, you know, good every round. If you play him every round, no one's really going to complain. You get barbed wire, and you get a bailiff for site setup. So honestly, I kind of like it when my teammates play Doc. Rook is a different story, though. Rook still does have the good scopes, and he has an ability that is okay, but he doesn't have the bailiff for site setup. He does, however, have impacts, so he's more of a soloistic kind of version of Doc. So you could put him in okay. I would completely understand. Same thing with Doc, but I honestly want to put Rook in good every single round. Now, the higher you are in rank, the less these two operators are going to be good every round, because naturally people have a higher headshot percentage due to them just being better at the game. But you also have to consider this is a solo queue ranked tier list, and the majority of solo queue ranked players are high silver and low gold, where these two operators are going to be very good. So I had to put these operators, for the integrity of the tier list, in good every single round. Next is Kapkan. I think Kapkan is good every single round. The lower you go in the ranks, you could arguably put Kapkan in broken every single round, but I'm not going to. I don't think he's that good. But I do think Kapkan is a great operator, hands down. The fact that you don't really have to work in order to get free kills, or at least free downs and free damage, is great. Even if you only end up hitting somebody with one Kapkan trap, you can always finish them off with your Nitro Cell. Pause. He doesn't have a 2.5 like the other operators, but honestly, you don't really need the 2.5. It's not like the 1.5 times scope where you can use it in every scenario anyways, because there's some maps where it's too zoomed in, which is the beauty of the fact that, like, the 1.5 is gone now. You actually have to choose between two different scopes instead of just one scope being meta. So I think Kapkan still is viable even without an ACOG. A Russian operator who does have an ACOG though would be Tachanka. I think Tachanka needs a rework. Now, with the addition of him having a 2.5 times scope as well as various meta shifts, I do think Tachanka is better this season than he was last season, because again, it's more of a slow-paced season. However, I think the issue with Tachanka lies not in the scopes that he have, but more in the gadget that he wields. And the fact of the matter is that his launcher is slow and it's clunky. If they gave him a buff like they gave Grim a buff with the launcher, he might be slightly more viable, but even then, the fact that you have to reload his launcher is just unnecessary and unneeded, and it's one of the main things that makes him unviable. Also, the fire radius is just not good, so people just run through it, and I think it also could do more damage, so he just needs to be reworked in some way. Next is Frost. I think Frost is pretty good every single round. I think with the ability to self-revive yourself out of a Frost mat, I don't think it changes Frost all that much, to be honest, because they can't sprint, which means they can't quick peek properly, which means they can't swing properly, and on attack, you need to be able to swing properly. Not only this, but you leave a huge trail of blood for a while, and you grunt really, really loudly, so everyone knows where you are all the time, and she also has a 2.5 times scope with a deployable shield, with a shotgun for sight setup, so I think Frost is still really, really good. It doesn't really matter that she got nerfed, in my opinion, because somebody who revives himself in a Frost mat is a kill regardless, even if they got out of the Frost mat. So I think Frost is still pretty good every single round. Shoot me. Next is Valkyrie. I think Valkyrie's broken every single round. Even in the TDM meta, I still think Valkyrie is broken. Now, the ability to not have outside cameras does kind of suck, but that's the only nerf they give in Valkyrie. And even after that nerf, people in tier list were still putting her in broken. So now that we're slowing down the meta, and with operators like Deimos being very powerful, and operators like Azami getting nerfed, we're starting to see an information meta. And I think Valkyrie suits that very, very well. And, you know, MPX always a good option, the 1x scope always a good option, not getting outshined by the 1.5, so I think Valkyrie is going to be played a lot more, and I think Valkyrie's broken every single round, to be honest. If they nerfed Valkyrie, I don't think anyone would really complain, to be completely fair. Someone who's not as good, though, is Caveira, and I think Caveira is okay. I don't think Caveira necessarily needs a rework, because there are certain things that they can do to Caveira to make her viable. For instance, making her primary SMG better, or maybe tweaking her ability in some sense. There are ways that you can make Caveira viable, but the fact of the matter is she kinda is viable right now, especially in the ranked meta. Now, with things slowing down, I think she might be back to where she was, let's say, a year or two ago, where nobody was playing her because she was terrible, but I think all they really have to do is buff her SMG, and she could be extremely viable. Now, the fact of the matter is that it is a little hard to play her when you have operators like Jackal, Dokkaebi, Lion, and Deimos, so maybe they need to buff her in the sense of her ability not being able to be countered as much, but I mean, I don't know that she needs a full-blown rework like Tachanka does. I think they can just buff her. Next is Echo. I think Echo is situational. Now, I love Echo. I'm actually one of the biggest Echo mans that there is on PC. I have tons of videos on how to play Echo properly because I think he is one of, if not the most misunderstood operator in the entire game. But even then, as somebody who loves and stands by Echo, I can't reliably put Echo in any of the higher tiers because the fact of the matter is there are only some certain sites where you can play Echo and be effective with Echo, because the entire point of Echo is that you rely on some strats in order to play Echo, but you can't use those strats on every single site. It's just not viable. If you want me to talk more about that, put it in the comments and I'll explain it more in depth because I just don't want to in this video, but just know Echo is situational. The same exact thing goes for Maestro. Now, Maestro did get buffed, so I do think Maestro is slightly better than Echo right now. The fact that Maestro also has the LMG with barbed wire and a bailiff, you could make an argument for Maestro going in good every single round, but I just don't think that Maestro as an operator and in terms of their usefulness and utility is anywhere near somebody like Jaeger or Capcan or Smoke or Frost or Doc or Rook, right? I just think he's a little underwhelming at times. Now, we are getting into an information meta, but Valkyrie is a much more reliable every round pick than somebody like Maestro or Echo is, so I had to put these two operators in situational. Another information operator that is situational that people are going to hate me for is Mira. Again, there are some sites where you just can't play a Mira because it's very, very easy for them to counter the Mira. Even some sites that you would assume you could really play Mira on, you can't. Sites, again, like Hukon Coastline, there is not a single position on a single wall that you could put a Mira that cannot be shot from outside easily. Not at least a useful one, but you get the idea. Even on places like Villa, Aviator, and Games, where you would normally see a Mira, people can easily just ash it open or Cali it open, or they can just buck below. So it doesn't really make sense to play a Mira on a lot of sites. There's just only a few specific situations where she can be good, and that's why I had to put her in situational, especially considering the nerf that she just received. The next operator is Legion, and I think Legion is good every round. Now, he doesn't have an ACOG, but I think the pure utility of having a Legion on the board is great. Like I said, we're in an information meta, and the best trap operator on defense when it comes to information is Legion, because he has the most amount of traps. So you can cover the most amount of entry points if you want to know where they're coming in, which is, again, good for information. So I think Legion is just really good right now. He also has a secondary shotgun for site setup, impact grenades, and a T5 SMG, which is great. So I think Legion is just a good every round pick. Someone who's not a good every round pick is Ella. Ella didn't see any buffs or changes with the new season, and because she didn't receive any changes, I'm going to put her in the exact same place that I put her last season, which is in OK. With people being able to reduce the screen shake intensity, Ella just no longer has a viable place in the meta, or as an operator, to be completely honest. I think the one thing saving her is her very good guns, and the fact that she has a deployable shield. If she didn't have either of those things, I would honestly stick her in rework, but the fact of the matter is that she is playable because of her other utility and her weapons, so I didn't want to put her in a tier of rework when really somebody could just buff her utility once and she'd be fine. Next is Vigil. Now, Vigil, I think, honestly, is one of the best roamers in the game right now, because of the fact that everyone and their mother is playing Deimos. Not only that, but again, we're starting to see people slow down. People are starting to drone more, especially because they want Deimos to be viable and be able to use his utility, especially because nobody has a 1.5 times scope. So if you want to use a 2.5, you kind of have to hold angles and play a little bit slower and make sure that you check your corners and stuff like that. And somebody who's very good at denying drones in a slow-paced meta, because people drone in a slow-paced meta, is Vigil. And Vigil's very good, again, because he counters Deimos too. He counters Lion, right? He counters Grim, who again is seeing more play because of Pro League. So I think Vigil right now is a great every round pick. And if you still want to bring a 2.5, the Boss G is an amazing weapon. I know that's a hot take, but I play Boss G all the time. I'm a huge Boss G main. I'm weird. Get over it. I like Boss G. If you don't want that, he's still got the K1A, which is an amazing weapon. Next is Alibi, and I want to put Alibi in good every single round. I think Alibi's utility can be pretty good if you pair it up with observation blockers and then you swing off of the utility, but if you're not doing exactly that, she's pretty terrible. But she also brings a deployable shield and a bailiff for site setup, which, if you can't tell, is something that's a recurring factor for anybody who's in this tier. So I do think Alibi deserves a little bit love from the Siege community, but she's nowhere near somebody like Valkyrie or Mute at all. Next is Clash, and I think Clash is a situational pick. There's only some certain sites where you can play Clash reliably, like, let's say, Kitchen on Cafe. That's a great Clash spot, right? But there's some sites where you can't play Clash at all, so it's just pretty situational. Next is Warden, and I think Warden is okay. I think if they buffed Warden's ability slightly, Warden would be a lot better. And with the removal of the 1.5 and him not having an ACOG, I think there are just better picks, because everyone picked Warden for the scope. He doesn't have the scope anymore, and other people do, so obviously Warden is going to move down a tier list. And with the TDM meta not really being in full effect, they could buff him in some way, because people are smoke planting more, and then I think he could be a good operator, but until then, I think he's just okay. Next, we have Mozzie. Mozzie is good every single round. The 2.5 being on his P10 Roni is great because it already has no recoil, so the ability to have an ACOG on that gun is great. He also brings a Nitro Cell, and like I said, information denial is going to be great for the defense, because I'm pretty sure we're going into an information meta. I am recording this at the time of the test server being live, so the season hasn't actually come out, but from what I've seen, it's most definitely going to be an information meta if this picks up. Next is Goyo. I think Goyo is good every single round. You got a 2.5 on the Vector, or if you're on the 1x scope, you still got a Vector. You got some of the best area denial in the entire game, and you have a Nitro Cell. What more can I really say? Goyo's great. Next is Wamai. Wamai, for the exact same reason as Jaeger, is going to go in the good every single round pick. You really can just never go wrong with Wamai. You play him every single round, you get MP5, you get Wamai discs. He's pretty good. Next is Oryx. I think Oryx is okay. Honestly, could go in the rework set. Nah, I think Oryx is just okay. If they buffed Oryx and made it to where he didn't lose HP by going through rotates, Oryx could be like a pretty damn good operator in certain competitive situations. Or if they just maybe made his ability a tad bit more useful, he could be good too. But that's really all I have to say. Oh, banger idea. Give him passive healing. That would be a great idea. Then people can't just spam through walls, but it also makes it to where if you make rotates, you're not screwed. And it gives him more uniqueness and makes him viable. That's a banger idea. Why has no one else thought of that? Anyways, until they do that, he's just okay. Next is Melusi. I honestly think now Melusi's gonna be good every single round. Now, I've been a Melusi hater for the past few seasons because Fenrir just does what Melusi does, but better and with more utility, and it's just so easy to counter Melusi that it doesn't really make sense to play her. Now, Fenrir's getting banned more often, and they just announced in the Year 9 roadmap that they're going to be nerfing Fenrir by taking away one of his mines and one of his phone calls. So people are going to start to play Melusi a lot more because Fenrir's getting nerfed, and he's still getting banned to this day. So I think Melusi's pretty good. She also just got an ACOG, and if you're a 3 armor with an ACOG, you just hold angles on sight and you get free kills. So I think Melusi's pretty good. Next is Aruni. Now, I am a huge Aruni hater. So I honestly think Aruni either goes in okay or goes in good every single round. Now, the issue with Aruni is there are operators in good every single round because the operators, if I see my teammates picking them, I'm not going to complain. But every time I see my teammates pick Aruni, my first thought is, dude, there's like 3 other better operators that you could have played in this situation. Why are you picking Aruni? Right? And there's just so much that counters Aruni. If you have one set of flash grenades, you completely counter her. But chances are they're going to bring a lot more than one set of just flash grenades. They're going to bring frag grenades, EMP grenades. Yana has her clone. They're going to bring utility. They're going to have drones. They're going to be able to hack it with Brava. They can just literally walk through them. And if you want a good DMR with more scopes on it, or you just want better scopes in general, there's better operators to run. So everything that Aruni does, other operators do better and bring more to the table. So I just think Aruni is okay. And if they buffed Aruni, I don't think anyone would complain. I know it's a hot take, and I'm going to get roasted in the comments, but I do stand by my decision for Aruni to go in the okay category. The next operator is Thunderbird. Thunderbird is okay. The worst healing operator in the entire game, and they need to buff her in some way for her to be at all viable. Next is Thorn. I think Thorn is good every single round. Now, the issue with Thorn is that her ability is just hot dog ass. And to be completely honest, she would be nothing without the 2.5 times scope right now. That's why people are running her. She brings a deployable shield. Her trap is good for information, if anything, at worst. So I think she's good. If you want to put her in okay, like I've been doing for the past few seasons, I honestly can't blame you. But because of the 2.5 and just how the meta is kind of lining up right now, I had to, in good faith, put her in good every single round. Next is Azami. Now, you might be thinking that with the Azami nerf, she's going to be put in, let's say, situational or even okay. But Azami, honestly, I still feel like is good every single round, and you honestly could still make a case that she's broken every single round. Now, a broken operator is somebody that needs a nerf. I think with the Azami nerf, Azami doesn't need a nerf. So I think Azami is good every single round. Now, the nerf does suck, sure, but you'll find yourself a lot when you go against an Azami that you don't really have safe situations where you can break her Azami barricades, and a lot of the times they don't get broken much regardless. And the fact of the matter is, she's still Azami. The fact that her ability does what it does, and there's a high skill ceiling to it, is still a good thing about the operator, and I don't think just because you're able to dump 2 mags into it to break the barricade that she's just going to redeploy anyways does much to her ability. Next is Solus. Now, they are going to nerf Solus soon, but they haven't done it yet. So Solus is broken every single round. In case you're wondering what they're going to do to Solus, what they're doing is they're making it to where you can't use her ability in the prep phase, which is what I've been begging for. That's the one thing that makes her broken. And then they're talking about nerfing her in some other way that they haven't talked about in the near future. They're also going to reduce her ability duration and her range, which is cool. But until they do that, she's still broken. So I had to put her in the broken category. Next is Fenrir. Again, Fenrir's going to get nerfed, but he hasn't yet, so Fenrir's still a broken pick. Now, I know that I said Melusi was good every single round because Fenrir was going to get nerfed, but because she has a 2.5 times scope and other operators did get nerfed like Warden, I think Melusi is just a good secondary pick in case someone like Fenrir does get banned, because chances are Fenrir is going to get banned a lot, so that's why I had to put Melusi in good. And then finally, we have the most recently added defender, Turborao. I think Turborao is situational right next to Cade, because the only time you really would use a Turborao is if you're using a Cade or a Bandit with the Turborao, and if you need somewhere where a wall needs to be closed. Now, Turborao before the nerf was broken, but now you have to be more sparing with your canisters. You can't just throw it at doorways and get free kills with it because you swing off of the frozen enemies. You only can really use it for utility because you only have 3 canisters, and because of the fact that they last longer, Ubisoft was almost telling everybody, hey, please use this for utility, which makes it really situational at best, which honestly I think is perfect for an operator like Turborao. But with that out of the way, my name's Alka. Check out this next video, and I hope I'll see you there. Later.